Good evening, everybody. It is February 17th. This is the Ashland School Committee meeting. I'll start by reading our vision statement. The Ashland Public Schools cultivates the academic and social emotional growth of each student through a supportive, collaborative, innovative, and challenging environment. Students will develop into self-motivated, resilient, lifelong learners who embrace their role as responsible contributors to a global community. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV, and our order of business this evening includes the agenda review and adoption. Are we having Student Advisory Council tonight? Yes, thank you, Kelly. We will have some time for public comment. And then we have school and department updates this evening, including a high school update from Ms. St. Kerr, middle school update from Mr. DiGirolamo, a Mendez school update, Mrs. Bennett, Warren School update, Mr. Regan, Pittaway School update, Ms. Davidson, SEL, Ms. Cutler, Student Services, Ms. Silva. We have student activities, bank reconciliations from October 1, 2021 through December 30th, 2021. That's Chris Matthew. We have face covering policy amendment EBCFA and vote for optional face coverings. That'll be Mr. Kendall. Transportation fee for SY23, Chris Matthew. Grant acceptance, Mass Cultural Council for $700 to Ashland High School Music Department. Warrant approvals, Mr. Kendall. We have approval January 20th, 2022 minutes. Acceptance of gifts and donations if there are any. Committee reports of activities, member updates, action items, and then we will adjourn. So I will start by asking for attendance from the school committee members, and if you could say whether you're in agreement with the order of business this evening, that would be great. So I'll start with you, Tina Catanides.
Here and yes.
Aaron Williams.
Here and yes.
Paul Kendall.
Here and yes.
And Mark Terry will be here, but he's not here yet. He's running a little bit late. We have presentation this evening from our Student Advisory Council. Is everybody here, Kelly, that needs to be?
It looks like we might be missing one or two people, but I'm sure they've figured it out how they're presenting. That's true, right?
So I'll ask the students, do you have everybody here that to get started, or would you rather me move to something else and come back to you?
I think one of our members is joining, but we have everyone else.
Okay.
Here.
Is the person that's joining scheduled to go first, or do you guys want to get started? And
yeah, he was scheduled to go first, but we can go on without him.
It's your call. I'll let you call because we can definitely move to something else and come back to you when you're ready.
Okay, let's do that then.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to start then with public comment. And this is the point in the meeting where we take comments from the public. If you're here to give comment, we ask that you leave your comments to under 3 minutes. If somebody has already said what you've said, take that into consideration. When you're speaking, we'll let you know if you've gone over. We won't be able to respond to you, but we'll certainly listen to what you have to say. So I will ask now for you to either raise your hand through the Zoom platform, or if you're on videos in a way that I can see you, and I will call on you to give comment. Okay, I see one hand and I don't see it. Let me go to the next screen. Let me just see how many people are hoping to speak. Or is there any other comments right now? So Leon, we'll start with you. I only see you asking for now, but if anyone changes their mind as we go along, you can let me know.
Sure. Hope everybody can hear me. Hi, everyone. First time appearance, so pardon.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So the reason why I joined today, right, is it's come to my attention that there is a consideration about phasing out the World Languages program, or part of the World Languages program at the middle school level, in particular the French language, to be phased out of the middle school curriculum. And that is the reason why I'm joining to pose some questions. Not sure if anybody has any additional comments on that. But if that is correct, if that is the plan, I haven't really been able to find any specifics or details as to the plan itself or the reason for that. My understanding is right now there are 2 languages that are being offered at the middle school, and one of them is going to be phased out, French. So I would be very interested to understand, what is the base behind a decision like that, if and what analysis or research was done. My understanding is with a basic Google search on other Massachusetts public schools, that not only they offer more languages than what are being offered at the Ashland public schools. I found, a lot of schools that they offer 4 or 5 languages at the middle school level. So, on one hand, I understand as a town we're made, significant investments to the infrastructure of, buildings, buses, improving the learning environment, just trying to understand where eliminating a foreign language from the curriculum, where that really, that is placed in that type of approach. So that's the end of my comments. I appreciate everyone listening to them.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on that issue? I guess we'll do this by issue. Does anybody else have anything they want to share on that before I say something very briefly? Even though it's not a real response to your questions, I want everyone who wants to say something to have an opportunity to do that. And I can't, let's see, I'll go to the next screen. I'm not seeing everybody at the same time. And I don't see any other hands raised, and I don't hear any other voices. And if you change your mind before the comment period is over, it's okay, I will take the comment. But just wanted to respond briefly. There's nothing, and normally we don't respond to comments or questions, and I'm not going to be able to answer your questions in particular, but there's nothing before the school committee on that issue just yet. I know that the middle school is looking into their programs, and you happen to tune in on a night when all the administrators are going to be giving us a little bit of information about what's going on in their buildings. So it may be that when it's Mr. DiGirolamo's turn, he may have something to share about that. So if you're able to stick around for a little bit and hear what he has to share on that, that's probably the best way for you to start to get information. But there's nothing before us right now. We're not making any decisions tonight. We're not talking about it further beyond this comment period or whatever, anything Mr. DiGirolamo has to add. So I just want to share that for anybody who might be tuning in for that reason, because I know that that's something that's been going around in the community. Sound good? Okay. Anybody else who would like to share anything during this comment period? Now's the time.
And it's best if you use the raise hand feature. That puts you right to the top of the queue. It's easy to see you if you do want to do that.
And I don't see anybody else wanting to offer comment.
Right.
So are the students ready yet, or should I move further down the agenda?
I think we're ready.
You're good to go?
Yep.
All right. Fill us in on what's happening, please.
I believe I'm first. So I guess, the first thing I'd like to talk about is a couple of weeks ago, we went through our midterms, which seemed to go really well, all things considered, especially because half the school, the freshmen and the sophomores, hadn't ever taken a midterm exam, and the juniors, which is like the grade that I'm in, only ever taken one, large exam in our high school careers. And all things considered, I think it went really well, and it was handled really well by the school. One of the ways that it was handled is the value of the midterms was brought from 10% to 5% to reduce stress. So it made it so, as opposed to being like one of the biggest grades that you have over the year, it was just like sort of like an extra valuable test. And some classes, depending on how the teacher decided to weight it, your midterm was more of just like a marker of how the class was doing, which I believe is how it's intended to be, than actually like one of the most important things of the year. There were also many successful fundraisers, especially this week surrounding Valentine's Day. The sophomores sold lollipops. The Leo's Club had a raffle fundraiser, and the junior and senior classes are selling prom tickets. Additionally, we've had a lot of snow days lately, which students seem to be appreciating. Obviously it wasn't planned that we were going to have a whole bunch of snow this winter. That would be disruptive. It's been helpful overall for mental health and all that fun stuff to have 4 days a week that you're worrying about school on average, as opposed to all 5. Obviously it's not sustainable long term, but it's been a little bit of a nice break.
You hear that, Mr. Adams? Okay, who's next?
I'll be sure to text them and make sure they know that it's appreciated by somebody.
3 cheers for snow days. Thank you.
So I can go next. So seniors are being accepted to a lot more colleges now that we're in February, and everyone's very excited about that. The NHS delivered cards and messages to the Bethany Healthcare Center for Valentine's Day, and it was a credit, so there was a lot of participation. NHS is also hosting their Bolero Fundraiser again on March 19th, and we're very excited about that. You can bring both NHS members and just your family and friends, so everyone's encouraged to that. The NHS also hosted the Ashland Ale House fundraiser just yesterday, and I heard it was a big success, so that's good, making our way towards our goal for needs. And the Academic Club had a great regional competition where we placed first overall in all schools, and we're looking forward to a strong states meet on March 5th. Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome news. Great job. Who next?
I'll go next. So class recommendations are being submitted tomorrow. So the past couple weeks, teachers have been having conversations with the students about classes for next year. And so like several elective options have been added. So depending on their popularity, new classes might be run next year, which is exciting. And high school is also giving surveys on adding a 3rd language and potential new electives for like future. And course selection will be the week after break, so that's when it's will decide. Also, Stuco's game show night got postponed to March 9th. They will be hosting Jeopardy and Family Feud in person for students to attend, with volunteers participating in the games. Also, just like a social event, girls in the junior and senior classes have been buying prom dresses and posting on Instagram, and prom proposals have also begun. Also tonight at 7, counselors are hosting College Knowledge Night for juniors to help us prepare for college. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next. So prom tickets were sold for the seniors during January and are being sold currently for the juniors. And the senior class has started to plan graduation and class day with the school administration. Winter sports are coming to a close, and some sports like wrestling, track, swim, and ski have made it to sectionals and states. And wrestling and alpine ski won their respective leagues. The AHS hosted Challenge Day recently, which was a great opportunity for students, teachers, and other members of the school community to like really connect with each other, as well as focus on their social emotional well-being.
Thanks, Raheem. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go next. So 2 days, we got February break, and many students are excited to have the week off. with break coming up, many winter seasons, sports seasons are coming to a close, and teams are either planning or have had a banquet to celebrate their success. And with winter sports coming to an end, we have spring sports registration opening up. So many kids are excited to pursue a new sport in hopefully good weather. And many classes are doing fundraisers during term 3, such as the sophomores selling sweatshirts and the seniors are going to be doing a Chick-fil-A fundraiser. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That's everybody.
Yeah, that's all we have.
That's everybody. Thank you very much. Lots of exciting things going on, and we appreciate you and all you're doing. And thanks for coming here and filling us in. And you guys are free to go if you want, because we're going to be moving down the agenda. So if you're leaving, have a great night and thank you. And if you're staying, we're moving on. Next, first, Ms. St. Kerr, you are up to give us an update on the high school, please.
They did such a good job. I don't think I have anything to share. A lot of the points, a lot of the points I had, the students shared, so thank you. And we hadn't had a chance this week to connect. Usually we do during an X block, and they did that independently this week. So great job. And so basically just, reporting on the high school, I think from my point of view, teachers have been reporting. It was a slow start and a tough first semester. But I'm really proud of this teaching staff and how hard they have worked alongside with students to support students and slowly work towards getting everyone back to, being regular students and typical students and doing things that we typically do in the high school. Our, department liaisons and working with each individual department really work together to discuss what mid-years should look like for students because many of our departments, and I won't say that all, because we certainly have several departments that are working towards different ways of assessment because it makes more sense for them. But the departments that felt it was really important to continue to give a longer exam, did so for very valid reasons and wanting to make sure these students are prepared for what assessment might look like in college. But we're very thoughtful in the content and of course the weighting, and the students mentioned that helped to have the weight reduced to 5% for a lot of students. So we continue to look at things like credit and absences for our students, in a flexible manner as opposed to how we did it before. The students mentioned we've started our course recommendation process for the next school year, which is always an exciting time. It is a little bit pushed back this year, just to give everybody a little more time. We learned a few lessons from COVID and some of the timing, and hoping to ease some of this on teachers by pushing it back a few weeks. Our program of studies is now posted, and we had class meetings every day this week with juniors on down. And we're excited to bring back a lot of the electives that we had maybe not been putting in the program of studies last year, or typically like our history department will alternate some variety of courses they offer, and kind of the departments took the approach of putting everything in the program of studies this year to kind of gauge some student interest and see what we'll be able to run next year. We always talk to the students about we really have to have a class size to run some of those courses. So just because it's in the program of studies doesn't mean it's going to run, but we're excited to get some more options back out there for students. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of with our English department, they have spent a lot of time over the last couple of years really looking at their courses and what they're reading from a real lens of equity and inclusion and diversity, and have really worked to include more diverse texts and thinking about how to support students. This year, we eliminated College Prep 1 from our senior English curriculum, and we just have College Prep, kind of combining those two levels. And next year, they're taking those courses and semesterizing them with a really based focus for each course. So seniors, current juniors who are in the college prep level will choose 2 different English courses kind of based on the theme and what they find interesting. And on top of that, we, I think you approved it maybe last meeting, but we're very grateful to Area and Decisions who made some donations of some reading materials. I know to all the schools, but we received some wonderful novels. Some are already part of our curriculum, so then we're able to put them out for general reading for students. You know, we're currently gearing up to get back into a kind of regular testing cycle. MCAS will be coming up in March. We will also be testing seniors who are interested in the seal of biliteracy. So that is a seal for students that are fluent in 2 or more languages that they carry on their diploma in their transcript moving forward. And that's a state program that we've participated in, I believe, since 2019. And then we've done a lot of work. You know, our CARES team is continuing to do a lot of great work around equity, offering PD for, you know, people across the district. Our student involvement in that PD has really increased, which has been exciting to see. I know there's been some great conversations with teachers from across the district and Ashland High School students. And our CARES team, along with our Cultural Student Union, is actually in the process of planning what we hope will be a tradition of a Flag Day ceremony that allows us to talk about the flags from all the different countries that are represented at Ashland High School. We're in the process of, you know, if you've ever been in the cafeteria, we have flags from all the countries that were represented when we moved into the building in 2005. And some of those countries don't even exist anymore. So those groups have been doing a lot of work, kind of collecting information on what countries our current student body represents. And we're going to do something to showcase those countries and traditions sometime in March. I think we ordered 28 new flags, and we'll be taking down about 10. Wow. And then we continue to work at, looking at our social emotional support. We're very excited. Jen Cutler and I worked we've been meeting with the JED High School organization, which is a national organization that started at the college level and is now working with high schools. It's a 2-year program that we received a great deal of grant funding to bring to the district. And the first 6 months is really an audit of the work that we're doing. And I think we do a lot of great work. It's just a matter of really looking at, are we doing it in a thoughtful, systematic way to make sure that we're reaching all students and we're doing things in a appropriate time frame, et cetera. The students mentioned Challenge Day, always a favorite day of the year. And we're also excited to start another program called I Decide, which parents have received information on, and that's a program through Mass General Hospital that helps provide education and support for students that have any substance abuse interventions needed. Should they get, should there be any, vaping or any kind of other substance use at school, Mass General will work with us to provide the education support that has been lacking in the community. We've had trouble finding resources around that recently. So all those the highlights for the last 6 months or last semester.
Thank you, Kelly. Does anybody on the committee have any questions for Ms. St. Cyr?
Kelly, I have a quick question. I was just, kind of in thinking about, obviously this year's different from last year and we're still dealing with COVID, but this year obviously is a much more normal school year. And so, kind of hoping to learn if you have been able to collect any data or gather any information in terms of the impact of COVID on our students. And if you have any information about potential learning loss or kind of academic deficits or gaps that might exist and how that's being addressed. I know, we've talked about the social emotional piece a lot because that's obviously a big component in terms of the impact of COVID as well. And I feel like the last time we had an update from the administrators, we were able to talk a little bit more about that because that's what we really focused on first and getting everyone back in the building. So I was just wondering if you had an update in terms of that academic piece and any learning loss that you may be seeing.
I think that's part of the big reason why certain departments wanted to make sure to give mid-year exams, to really use those as a, a way to assess. We know what students could do 2 years ago when we gave this type of exam, where are they now? So they're still in the process of analyzing that information in department meetings this week. I think definitely it has been noted that things take longer. And I think teachers, that has been a regular report across all departments, that it takes longer for students to take an assessment, or to, just the process of providing instruction. Definitely a lot of changes have had to be made to, support students. So I would say that, most departments have noted that they have had to, go back to different starting points with students. And I think it depends on the department. It depends on, the course within the department. But I would say they have all reported having to, kind of reevaluate what is being taught in each course, and perhaps backtracking a little bit to do some reinforcement of things that they expected students would know already when they arrived in the course. So yeah, the departments have been looking at that.
Mm-hmm. And is it something, do you think that most classroom teachers feel like maybe if they, obviously, like you said, every class is likely going to do it differently, because, they're all individual at the high school. It might look a little different than in an elementary model, but do the classroom teachers feel as if they're able to meet those needs within the classroom, or are more students needing interventions? Or do you not know that? Do you not necessarily have that data yet?
No, I would say that as classroom teachers are certainly experiencing a higher level of need within the class and needing to do interventions. I didn't mention XBlock as part of what's new this year, and that has been a time that teachers can offer some more targeted support. Many teachers offer a course specific study time during that XBlock time. But I think we would be able to look at our failure list and say it's a little higher than it was previously. So that's some data we have. That's another change we've actually made, is we've been giving 50 as the minimum failure grade for the majority of our students that are failing. If we might have a student that's really struggling and somehow has a 35 in a class, we've been giving 50 as the lowest grade right now. But our failure numbers are up right now. Our counselors are looking at that and following those students and tracking and offering a variety of different supports.
Thank you.
I had a sort of similar, I guess, mindset around questions that Tina did, but ties a little bit, Kelly, to your discussion about students needing support if they have substance abuse issues, and more. I'm thinking about, from the social emotional aspect of things and behavioral aspect of things. Are you seeing any increased issues with either drug or alcohol use, just over the last year or year and a half, compared to what you would have expected to see a few years ago?
I don't know that I'd say increased from, say, pre-COVID. I think we saw a reduction in any issues within the school building during COVID. And I would say that, some of the things that we were seeing before COVID are back, increased vaping use in school. We have not seen a lot of drug or alcohol use in school or at school events. And we didn't before COVID. They were pretty isolated incidents, but we have had them this year. And we had hardly any last year. And our handbook has always offered students the opportunity that, if you are caught with marijuana in school, it's an automatic 5-day suspension. But if you're willing to pursue some sort of program or intervention, we reduce that suspension. And, that's where I say, we haven't been able, it's been families have struggled and we've struggled to find programs out there that are suitable for students and that really have an impact. So that's part of the reason we're excited about the side-to-side program.
Any other just generalized, sort of differences in behavioral issues or anything like that you kind of attribute to where we are in COVID at this point?
Yeah, I think we certainly, it's, national news that students have had a harder time. There's been a rise in students struggling to behave in the classroom and, possible altercations within the building. And we have experienced that as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else for Ms. St. Kerr? Okay. Middle school. Thank you. Mr. DiGirolamo. Hello. Oh, I think, are you muted?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're back.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll echo a little bit what Kelly said in terms of the start of our school year. Clearly felt a little bit different in terms of for teachers thinking academically about all that that they wanted to do in terms of supporting students and making sure that they covered all the materials that they needed to cover. So they worked really hard to do that. They were fortunate to use our discovery block for providing students additional support, covering concepts or reviewing concepts that they felt students could use more support around, providing remediation. The middle school was doing our 6 student success plans again this year and focused on those students who struggled on the MCAS test. So, that all those challenges were in front of us right as we started the school year, and the teachers did an amazing job meeting, talking about what they needed to do, and then hit the ground running. We, like Kelly, I think, definitely, have seen and experienced students with a little bit of a slower start, struggling with organization, just sort of the overall structure and managing their school day and their school work for sure was an adjustment. Taking a while longer to get into routines and meet expectations and struggling with peer interactions. Those things we all saw early on and we continue to see, although as time goes on, that's been getting a little bit better. So I think those were some of the challenges just early on, but I feel as the year has progressed and students have adjusted, that things have certainly improved. So academically going in, that was something that the teachers had met in the spring last year coming in about, as well as just concerns around mental health, right? I think our counselors, not quite sure how students were coming in or the levels of support that they need. They started doing what they call minute check-ins, basically connecting with every student, checking in to see how they were doing and building relationships with students with all grades. In 8th grade, we did the SOS, the Signs of Suicide program, in the late fall, early winter, let's call it, where students are presented a program and are screened around depression and suicide. And that program went very well. And in 8th grade, in last month, in January, we brought in the Minding Your Mind program, which has been at high school, I know, for years with Kelly. And I've seen those presentations, and we brought them to our 8th grade this year. And I felt it went very well. There was a really positive reaction with the students and staff around the Minding Your Mind program. So those are just some of the things that we've been doing, knowing we'd have these challenges coming in that we focused on to try to get students where they need to be and support them to have a successful school year. So right now we're really started our transition planning. The 8th grade students went to the high school in January for a quick tour, and high school offers a meeting for students and parents in March, so that transition, we're getting prepared for that. Our Keith Tech applicants have done their interviews. They'll hear how they did within the next few weeks or so. So that's been part of the process. After February break, we start Kelly starts a little earlier than us, but after February break, we start our, the scheduling process. 8th grade students and teachers making course recommendations for the high school. So that's exciting. That's coming up within the next couple of weeks. So it's right around now where we start our scheduling process, both the transition and the schedule process. And I'll speak to what Leon had said earlier, and we asked a question about world language, and that is part of our process for sure. World language is the one program in the school where students are selecting to participate, minus maybe our chorus and band, which are ancillary programs off our specials, but largely it's our world language program. So we certainly are looking at, we offer Spanish and French. We always look at the numbers for both of those and look at our staffing and our programming and what we're able to do. So these conversations have been happening for years. And yes, we're looking at the numbers and the data around those programs. We haven't made any recommendations to school committee at this point, but we're having some conversations and looking at that to see what our program will be looking like moving forward. So it is definitely a process, and we haven't sort of finished that process yet, but I did want to speak to that. It's we like having a world language program. It's extremely important, and support the program and see the value in the program. But we also want to look at those numbers and the data and the students that are choosing those programs and what we can do with the staff we have. So those are things that are happening as well over the next couple of months or weeks as time progresses, as we move forward. So more would certainly be coming as we evaluate those programs. For professional development, we're working with the same people, the same company that Kelly had worked with last year at the high school. Really exciting to have them work with our staff. And we've looked at MCAS data. We've looked at our underserved populations at the middle school, and are working to, and we'll put together an equity team within the next month. And we'll look to really start examining what the middle school can do and continue to do and do differently to better serve, especially our underserved students as we move forward. So we've done some great things in terms of the curriculum as well. We've done some great steps in terms of diversifying things and having teachers focus on diversity and focus on different culture. But I think there are great things to come, and really excited to see what comes of the training and comes of the equity team in those conversations. So more updates to come on that work for sure. We're working with Decisions at Every Turn as well. We've done stand campaigns and focused on our core values. Did a campaign earlier focused on students making healthy decisions, and working with Decisions at Every Turn right now on a campaign around vaping, which was just covered on our 7th and 8th grade wellness classrooms. So we're timing it up. So once that's finished, we'll look to launch that campaign. So working closely with them. They've surveyed our students. They've held student forums. We're collecting information and data from students, and also surveying students about the campaigns, what the messaging should be, what the visuals should look like, just the overall launch of the program. So students, there's an ownership there from students in an investment as to what will be successful as part of the stand campaign and program. So coming up in April, we'll do our student leadership training again. We're excited about that. I've met with our advisor, Katie Lazat, around that training. And this year we'll be training our 7th grade students. We'll also train some 6th grade students as well. So we're excited about that. Our 6th grade teachers feel like they have this core group that's ready and wants to learn more about leadership and is ready to learn more about mentorship. And that's exciting. So we've never done that before. So that'll be new, and that's coming in April. PBI's team has been hard at work. It's been more of a challenge, to be honest, with COVID. I miss our assemblies. I miss getting the students in the gym and having some fun and giving out our awards and getting loud in the gym. That's always fun. But our Clocker Cash program is up and running. So teachers rewarding students for doing great things in the school, and they get their Clocker Cash, which they get to spend at the school store every 6 weeks or so. And PTO has been great in supporting that program. So trying to again celebrate students for doing great things. Kelly mentioned I Decide for substances. That's something that the middle school is doing as well. So we're currently now our assistant principal guidance, we're being trained in the program, and we'll have that up and running as well. Probably most recently, we held a digital citizenship program for parents. Last night, our students in all grades have had lessons from their guidance counselors in the last week or so around digital citizenship and cyber safety and cyberbullying. We have seen an increase of incidents for sure at the middle school. It's always been an issue with so many students having phones, but it has been an increased issue this year. So in conversations with teachers and our counselors, this is something that we thought was really important. And counselors were in classrooms talking about those things, talking about how students and the decisions they're making online, and also the dangers of sharing too much information. So, and then brought in Middlesex Partnerships for Youth. That program had a presentation, a workshop last night around the same topic, presenting parents with information around current apps, some tips and tricks for parents to use to help try to manage the overwhelming task of managing our children around social media and technology, which is ongoing challenge. And other than that, last quick ones would be, we wrapped up our basketball seasons for boys and girls this week. So great to see sports back and students out there again. And we're looking forward to our softball, baseball, and track seasons coming up and registrations open. We'll have band and drama concerts coming up, musical production in May, the band concert in March, and we'll also be getting ready for MCAS before April vacation. So been very busy. It'll be very busy to come, but really, really excited for the remainder, for the rest of our school year. It's hard to believe February break is here, and after the break, we'll have a lot to do, but there are a lot of great things ahead. So I would say that's our snapshot of what things look like right now.
Thanks, Dave. School committee members, do you have any questions about what's happening at the middle school?
I have a similar question to what I asked Kelly in terms of, kind of learning loss and the impact that COVID has had kind of on the academics of our students. And, Kelly had mentioned that, her teachers are seeing, an increased need from students at the high school. Their failure rate is a little higher than it has been. And I'm curious what you're seeing at the middle school, and if you've been able to quantify any gaps in where those student needs are and kind of how we're meeting them.
Yeah, so I would say, especially early on, Tina, we definitely noticed the challenges of just students getting back into the routine of school. So in terms of students struggling, we had a lot of students struggling, I would say, and especially in the higher grades in 8th grade, students struggling to keep up with the work. Just they weren't used to sort of those expectations and work production. And that's something that was an adjustment for sure. And but I would say, in talking to teachers in the last couple of months, after those first 2 months, that students definitely have really picked it up in terms of the work they're doing. That they are doing the work, they are working hard, and in terms of so that's improved. In terms of the gaps, I think that's something that they noticed as students came in, and a lot of it was, talking to the 7th grade teachers about, what wasn't covered as much last year, what they needed to spend more time on, and they noticed that spending time on those in discovery and in their classrooms has really borne fruit. So, in terms of data, I think early on, they were just noticing students didn't have some of the skills that they typically would have coming into 8th grade. So it was working with those students to build those skills. And I think that was a large part of it. It was hard to tell what they didn't have versus some of the organization management and other abilities that they would typically have. So we're continuing to look at that. I think we had a larger group, Tina, of our ISSP students, right? Of students who struggled more on MCAS. That's a data point that we do look at. And more students in terms of achieving proficiency or growth was a little bit tougher to look at because MCAS was half, the sessions were half of what they were the year before. But we did notice, looking at that data, looking at our performance, that students had not performed as well. So there was an increase in the amount of students that were on success plans. Certainly, we're fortunate at the middle school that teachers have meeting time during the school day, that teams meet to talk about those students, to talk about the gaps that we're seeing in individuals, or if it's something that was done subject-wide or discipline-wide. So we're fortunate to have that team meeting time and that discovery block to work on those things. But we have noticed certainly that they struggled on MCAS, and we're interested to see how students will do in the spring. I think that's another data point that will give us an idea of how successful we were in closing some of the gaps that we've seen.
And just a kind of a follow-up question in terms of, you said some of the, and I think the kind of the beauty of the model that you have is that, like, the 8th grade teachers can talk to the 7th grade teachers, 7th grade can talk to 6th to kind of see maybe where they ended up in their curriculum, to be able to more clearly identify any gaps that they'll then need to fill in. And in terms of those, you know, potential gaps, do you think it'll be able to be closed by the end of the year to cover what they missed and then finish the 8th grade curriculum, or will there still be a little bit of a gap moving forward?
So they'll finish the curriculum, Tina. I think what they would say is, for some of the teachers last year, where they might spend more time on certain units or certain concepts. So the curriculum is being covered, but they would like to have gone into maybe more depth where they had more time if we weren't in that hybrid model. So in terms of, is that gap going to be closed? That's really difficult to predict that. Yeah. You know, we're there, we're back. The students have the skills that they need. That's, I think, something we need to be looking at, year to year. It'll be interesting to see each year where they are at. I'll be interested to see what the growth numbers look like, for this year once we get those results in the spring. We've always focused on growth at the middle school. I think that gives us a better framework for our students are at, and from one year to the next, and how they're growing. So I've always found that real valuable, and that's something that we missed as a data point, and something that we've looked at. So I find it really hard to say they're 100% going to be there, but I think the teachers feel, especially in the last few months, that they've made huge gains. In the first couple of months, it was like, it's slow going, Dave. We're trying to get them there, but they're definitely, I feel like we might not get there. It just took them a while. And whereas in the last couple of months, students have figured out, in terms of organizationally, management, starting to review those concepts, and I think they're starting to see more significant gains. So I'm hopeful that, yes, the next couple of months will continue to improve. And being in school has been huge. Each month we've been here, you can see the improvement, and I would expect that to continue. It's just a tough prediction to make.
Good. Yeah, no, it's just something to make sure that we're kind of just being aware of, kind of any additional supports to kind of I don't want to say coming out of COVID, this will end eventually, but it's obviously we're getting more back to normal now than we had been last year, of course. So just want to make sure that, and clearly you guys already are, but just staying on top of what that looks like, and what do our students need, and do we have all of the right supports in place? So thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else with questions for Dave? Okay, thank you, Dave. Moving on to Claudia.
Evening.
Hello.
So I just want to start off by saying I think probably the most powerful thing we've done for our students really is being back in school full time, and then everything we do that's a little bit more what we would consider to be normal is also powerful for our students. And so from that perspective, it's just been a tremendous year. And sometimes it does feel like it's a different every couple of months, it feels like a different year than it was before, even though we're still in the same year, because things are different. You know, our students, I think the same as we've heard from Dave and Kelly, our students have started the year without a lot of practice, or without a year and a half of practice of some of the things that we took for granted when they came to third grade, that they knew how to be in line, and they knew that they just couldn't pop open a can of soda in the classroom whenever they happened to be thirsty. And some of those things that in a public school setting, you don't, those aren't typical behaviors, but they might be in your own home, right? And so we certainly have seen a lot of that. I think that our students, you know, we've definitely seen the impact in terms of their social emotional well-being, you know, but I'm really proud to say that we have 3 tremendous counselors. I don't want to say it exactly like this, but they might be the best in the district. I'm sorry, my colleagues. And so they are in our classrooms, every single classroom, once a week, you know, to really get to know the kids. They, you know, they have lunch groups with them. They are there when a student needs them. Their door is open. So that's just been, you know, just tremendous from the perspective of the students. And I can tell you that there are more students seeking the comfort of our counselors. We also, you know, this year we added a half-time school psychologist in addition to the one that we had. And you know, he's been a tremendous asset. And, you know, again, we have seen, like I said, anxiety and just what's it feel like to be back around so many people. We've tried to do a lot of things that, like I said, were normal in previous years, and we've been implementing them. Sometimes we've had to adjust them a little bit, but we did in the fall on marathon weekend. We had our traditional Mindes Marathon. It was actually the last event that took our students through the woods prior to our woods being shut down so that the building of the new school could start. We had a turkey trot in November. And so these are all events that we actually hadn't had for 2 years, many of them. You know, I think if you remember a couple of years ago when our current 5th graders were 3rd graders, there were also triple E issues. So we had limited access to using our outdoors. So these were first time events sometimes for the entire school. We had our 5th grade handball tournament. That was the day before we left for our winter break. It was just a tremendous day. We did not bring the entire school into the gymnasium as we have in the past, but rather we had the 5th graders in the gymnasium, and we Zoomed it. Actually, WACA, thank you very much, broadcast it over Facebook Live so our classrooms could watch it in their rooms. So it was a great event. Everybody, it just felt so normal. It was just really, again, a powerful event. Tomorrow we have our jump rope-a-thon. Again, we're modified it so that we will not have the entire student body in the gymnasium at once, but everyone will, this is the culminating activity from the physical education jump rope program. So, and then in early stages, conversation with the 26.2 Foundation, who is going to, again, is offering to support us in any number of ways so that we can have a Mindes Marathon in the spring, right at around marathon time, and we certainly plan to do that as well. We continue with our ELA PD. This year, we've been lucky to be able to have it back in person for the most part. And we have a literacy coach too that we share with Warren School. That's been, she's been really a great asset to us. And, you know, it's tough sometimes to share a staff person, but the good news is it also provides a really nice connection between the 2 schools and with what, you know, Pete's doing down there and what we're doing at Mindes. So that's been, she's been a real super addition. And I know that the teachers, you know, it's hard when somebody new comes on board and they're going to tell you how you should maybe do something, but our teachers have been very receptive, and they have nothing but very positive things to say about her. We are looking forward to, providing some other end of the year enrichment programs, looking at some of the programming we've done in the past that now they offer Zooming, and who knows, we might even be able to get in a few in-person programs before the end of the year. We certainly hope to have some special celebrations for our 5th graders as they go off to middle school. And Dave, I hate to tell you, but they're already using their phones, not always for good. And I thank you for offering, Mr. DiGirolamo offered the presentation to our 5th grade families as well this week. So I hope that many of them took advantage of it, because I think I have to have a talk with all those families about what some of their students might be doing with their phones. And then, so we've had about a 30 student increase population wise from last year. We actually have 28 since the summertime. We've had about 28 students, EL students, come to us, join us. And out of those, 22 have been non-English speakers. So that's had a dramatic impact on our EL program. Our EL teachers have really stepped up how we are approaching those families and the students, but the larger picture, the families, right? And they are working with our school site council to create some friendly ways to greet them and to help them grow accustomed to what school looks like in America. So that's kind of, it's really quite exciting to have the opportunity to bring people to this country and see what it really looks like to be an immigrant to our nation. So it's good for everybody. And on that same note, this week, Terry Grassi is retiring. Tomorrow's her last day. If you're around, please stop by. Mrs. Deliego has organized some refreshments during the course of the day. And the person who is joining us in her place actually speaks Portuguese. And she's been on board this week, trying to learn a little bit about Terry's job, or her new job. And, she's already had the opportunity to speak Portuguese with families for us many times. I did want to mention, because the high schoolers mentioned it. So Valentine's Day, what another normal activity, right? Last year we were putting Valentines in bags and setting outside for 3 or 4 days where nobody could touch them. And this year, it's just amazing. You forget the joy that the children have around things like Valentine's Day. It's just one of those special things about being in an elementary school. So I think I've hit the high points. Oh, well, come on, Paul, what's the matter with me? In the backdrop, we have a brand new school going up. And so it's been it's really something to watch, to see how that landscape has changed, especially in those first 2 weeks. I never saw anything like it. And even now, the rock crushing, all the blasting is done. I think some of the students were sad about that. They really enjoyed a good cheer when the blast would go. But it's certainly very exciting. And, the one challenge right now that's come with that is that our recess area is gone, right? So what we have done recently is we have roped off, especially with the weather, we've roped off the front entrance and forced vehicles to go into the circle for parking if they need to come to the main office area. And that way the students have been using the paved area in front of the school. They have found a wall that's one side of my office that looks like it's going to serve pretty well as wall ball, which is certainly one of the more popular activities at recess. And we are also in the process of buying some additional equipment for them. The PTO has a couple of basketball hoops that they purchased in the late fall, and we hope to get those installed as soon as the ground thaws a bit. So that is so in any case, I guess the final thing about in terms of the new building is on the days when we're struggling about this, and sometimes the teachers have struggled and been unhappy about recess and they lost a few parking spaces. And I have a big poster of the new school in my office, and above it I have written, "Eye on the prize." So I try to keep everybody, I brought that out to our faculty meeting last week and said, you know, whatever we have to work through right now will be fine. In a year and a half, they'll have a brand new school.
Thank you, Claudia.
Certainly.
Questions for Ms. Bennett?
Mrs. Bennett, I have the same question that I asked Kelly and Dave, just in terms of, you know, if you, you know, and I know at the elementary level, you guys, you know, do assessments differently and a little bit more regularly, you know, particularly for math and reading. And I'm just curious if you've been able to identify any areas of learning loss or gaps that we may need to be aware of, so we can make sure we're focusing on the right supports for our students to help fill any of those COVID gaps.
Yeah, you know, we certainly, we've just kind of finished a lot of our mid-year assessments and have been looking a little bit at the data from that. And again, the way Dave described, you know, we look at growth. And I can say that growth-wise, you know, we saw what I compared it to 2019, 2020, that being the last normal year. And growth-wise, it looked very similar to where we stood in 2019 to 2020. I don't know if it's the same level, but in terms of the growth. And again, to Dave's point too, I think what we've seen is at the beginning of the year, it was really hard to get everybody rolling, right? But now it does feel as though we have some rhythm and that the growth is happening a little bit faster now. You know, I don't think it's not going to go away in a year's time. I think it's a struggle some days for the teachers and certainly for the students to think about this year and to be in the midst of it. And on one hand, you want everything to be normal, and so you're doing everything to make it as normal as possible. And yet you also have to recognize that it's not normal, and it's been a challenging year, and to find that that balance. But I definitely feel as though you know, it was a little bit trickier for us because we updated bought the newer version of our math curriculum, and it is a little bit different. So now, you know, our friends are experiencing that for the first time, particularly the third graders, because there are some things that were definitely, you know, fell at different times of the year than previously so they were seeing things very early that they wouldn't have seen until probably mid-year. Also, it's very language rich. I mean, the other one was language rich too, but this is even more so. Mm-hmm. You know, our literacy, we are moving forward with that. I know the teachers feel successes in that, and that, you know, they are learning it. Again, that program itself is very dense. And indeed, people are going to grow into that for almost, I think, forever, because there's always, and I think teachers always want to do everything perfect. They don't want to let go of those students until they understand everything perfectly. But there's just been tremendous growth among the teachers as well. And I think even last year, after we took MCAS in literacy, teachers were really impressed with what they saw our students writing. And that was reflected in our scores as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Claudia. And we'll move on to you, Pete.
Thank you.
Mr. Regan from the Warren School.
So at the Warren School, we see a little different challenge than presents from the children that have already spoken of from the other schools. Both at Pitaway and for Warren, we have children that have never experienced what we would all call a normal school year. Our second graders were the group that was shut down when they were in kindergarten. Our first graders had remote 5 days a week until April. And now our kindergartners, this is our first group at the Warren School for these 3 years that have been in school 5 days a week. So that's definitely a celebration point for our staff. As we've now completed over 100 days of school, we're seeing a lot of trends and patterns starting to come, and some of them align to concerns that the staff raised at the beginning of the year and that we planned for, and then we've identified some other new areas of need as well. So as I started with our staff at the beginning of the year, the challenges haven't gone away, but the adrenaline is not as strong as it was when COVID first started our staff. So fatigue is definitely hitting our staff, and the vacation's coming at a good time. As we work through this year, and as you've heard about the curriculum components from the other staff, from the other schools, we do have a brand new math program. It's a continuation of our old program, but it's newer, and it's very language based. There's some great parts to that, which means that it's no longer just computations, but where children are being asked to identify the strategies that need to be used and to apply their mathematics skills. With their EL population, this is a challenge because of how language rich the program is, but long-term, it is going to be a great step for our children. It's new for our staff as well. So the staff still, they're teaching the program with fidelity, but in doing that's where they can identify what are some of the sticking points for our students where they need additional supports. In addition, we've started a brand new phonics program for all of our students this year with foundations. We're seeing great results from that with our children and our performance assessments. We're also continuing our work with the units of study. And as Claudia mentioned, our outside consultant is continuing to work with us and working very closely with our literacy coach, Kathy Ferrecchia. Kathy's going into classrooms, as is the consultant, working with them and working with teams on their planning. Tina, I'm going to jump ahead to the question that you've been asking of saying, what are we seeing as far as learning loss and gaps? Yes, they are present, and we're seeing them in different ways. My understanding is that Mike Kyra is going to be presenting on that in an upcoming meeting and talking specifically about what that looks like. The day-to-day pieces at our school is we're seeing for the students where remote learning didn't work well for them, they are behind. Our teachers are working really hard. They're using their colleagues during their PLC time. They're using the RTI process, and they're identifying strategies. And what is exciting is we're looking at the growth of children, and we do have children that are making significant growth. We have a group of students that were identified as at risk that have already made a year's worth of progress in just the 100 days that we've had so far. And again, that's through the efforts of our teaching staff, the support staff, and what they've been able to do. Coming back to the challenges of our students and why these gaps, I feel, are present, is our teachers are spending a lot of time working with our students and just teaching them how to be part of a group and how to be with other people that are not their immediate family. And this goes beyond the morning meeting and the responsive classroom and PBIS components of our instruction, but just teaching people about how to be together. And there's a lot of that goes on each and every day. There are more behaviors than we've seen in the past, and this is prior to the pandemic. How we're challenging our students and working with them is we've used a lot of different formats to teach these skills, including videos of different staff members, and the kids are getting a big kick out of that. Our assemblies needed to shift greatly, where we still need to have whole school assemblies because we want kids to understand how they're part of this bigger group and that they're part of the Warren School. We were only able to do that outside while the weather was nice. Once we shifted to the indoors part of the year, we went to grade level assemblies in our gym. That was a great experience. And then the Omicron surge came and we went to virtual meetings. So we are missing some of those components of bringing our children together and to teach and practice more of those skills. Other parts that are happening with this is we are bringing back some of those fun aspects as well, such as just last week with the 100th day parade. As Claudia mentioned, Valentine's Day is a big hit at an elementary school where kids really like it. And our teachers have really maximized that fun side of it, but also making it the academic component where students are writing. And the writing is greatly improving with how they're sharing this and what's going on, as well as spirit days. Thankfully, our PTO has been very creative and worked with us where we had an outdoor assembly at the beginning of the year, and we just are in the midst of working with our artist in resident, Bren Bataclan, where he's creating another mural in our dining room on kindness, and that lines up to, I'm sure Jen is going to be speaking about that as we're celebrating Kindness Week in our schools. Other parts that are very exciting to me right now that haven't been mentioned yet is the amount of staff that have participated in a Portuguese class that Dr. Cairo was able to offer. So we've had 5 staff members from the Warren School, 25 staff members from the Ashland Public Schools that just completed a 10-week course where every Wednesday night for the last 10 weeks, they've been doing 2 hours of Portuguese instruction. And I will tell you personally, the difference it makes when you can sit down with a child and just show that we're trying to understand their culture and their language, children are lighting up. And they're getting a big kick out of it. One of the students, a first grade student who came to us not speaking English, was thrilled that I asked him to help me with my homework because I needed to create a dialogue and record it all. And at the end, he told me that I was doing a good job and that he would help me because I still needed a lot of work on my Portuguese. And it's just so exciting to see that students are recognizing the efforts that the adults are putting in to make them more comfortable, for us to have better understanding and to understand our differences. Of other parts of our school year, again, I've mentioned as well, the work of the staff has been absolutely outstanding. And, last year, it seemed like the theme word that repeated over and over was pivoting. That hasn't gone away. It's shifted a great deal. And depending on what COVID counts are and where we are, we're asking the staff to do very different things on a regular basis. Classroom arrangements are being changed based on can we bring children together or not. And they've continued to just make me proud to be able to work alongside with them each day for what they're accomplishing with our children. My hope, as is theirs, is that we will get to a place very soon where we can start having the families and communities in our school again.
Thank you, Pete.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
I want to thank you for anticipating my question. I look forward to the update from Mike when he presents it.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Mark, is that you with a question? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we'll move on to Sarah for the Pitaway. Where are you, Miss Davidson? I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Are you muted? Paul, can you help? You should be okay now, Sarah, I think.
Yeah, you should be able to now.
Now I can. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Thanks, Paul.
So,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. The last of the school buildings, Pitaway, our littlest learners, have been back in full force this year. Last year, we were able to run much smaller class sizes 4 days a week. But we are back much closer to capacity 5 days a week, and it has continued to be such a fun year. I still am so grateful for families that are willing to send their kids to our program without ever being in the building. We do virtual visits and things like that. 1 second, my computer seems to be doing something. I hope I don't lose you guys.
There she goes. Oh, that's frustrating. We can go to you, Jen, while we give her a chance to come back. Does that work for you?
That works for me.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I am giving you an update on our social emotional learning department. So I'll kind of give, each principal has kind of shared about their counselors. So I'll do sort of a top overview. So one of the things that I was really excited that we were able to get in this year is the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, which is a way for teachers, we have it at Warren and Mendez this year, to rate their students on a social emotional measure. And students either come up within the needs instruction range, which just means they need further instruction in the area of social emotional competency skills. They come out within the typical range or the strength range. So this is our first year, so it's a really interesting assessment and we're getting used to it. But in November, the Mendez teachers did the rating first for all of their students. And then in December, our Warren teachers completed it. So we're a little further ahead in what we're doing at Mendez than we are at Warren. But I can share with you that this is really interesting. I obviously don't have this is our baseline data, so I don't have data before the pandemic, but we had 105 students from K to 5 who came up within the needs instruction range. That's only 8%. So that's actually pretty low. And the typical from their standardization sample is about 16% in a needs instruction range. So we're much lower than that. 70% or 877 students came out within the typical range, and 22%, 276 students came out within the strength range. So I was actually really pleased to see that. Our third grade, and Claudia, this is not a surprise to Claudia, actually came out with sort of the highest number. I didn't write that percentage down, but the highest number of students that were in the needs instruction range. We actually had full classes, 2 classes that had more than 50% of their kids within that needs instruction range. So what the Mendez counselors, and I agree they are wonderful, although I think all of our counselors are wonderful, Claudia, but the Mendez counselors have done a really great job of taking those classes, if they have a high number of students in their classes who scored within that needs instruction range, and they're actually have added on more targeted, they already do their weekly lessons with the classes. Now they've added on more targeted lessons specific to the social emotional competency areas that class scored within the needs instruction range in. So this is the first time we've ever been able to actually have data to really look and see what areas, what SEL areas we really need to teach in. So I'm really excited because we're going to actually have some data when we do our second rating period in April, May. We'll be able to see student scores and how they increased. And I'm really interested to see how these extra interventions are supporting that. And so what I really hope to see is obviously students from needs instruction going into typical. And I'd love to see the typical range going up. Typical range, just as in any assessment, is a pretty large range. So we will actually be able to see our students, go up within the typical range, and I'm sure some will go into the strength range. The other thing that the Mendez counselors have done is they have been doing lunch groups for years, as Claudia said, but they have each taken, so each grade level counselor at Mendez is taking one group to start, and they're focusing on the specific competency areas that those students, so maybe it's like 3 or 4 students have were very low in. So it could be self-management, coping skills, conflict resolution, relationship social skills, and they're actually putting in place a 6 to 8 week targeted group where it's specifically focusing on those skill areas. They've never done that before, and I'm really, really proud of them for doing this because it's something very different than past practice, and I think it's really going to be beneficial. And they're really excited about it too. So they're excited. They say, "Oh, come watch us, come see us," and I'm like, "I will be there." So it's really exciting. So I think we're really moving into a new sort of a new level of being able to support our students from a social emotional perspective. And that's really exciting for me to see. The other area that our Warren counselors and our Mendez counselors thought was really interesting is that we can use the DESA scores to really help with placement. So for kids to the next grade level, because, I think that we're really good at taking the data we have for academic students and making sure that we have a good spread of learners across the spectrum, but we've never had an actual social emotional score. So we can do the same thing where we sort of have, a certain number of kids within the strength range, a certain number of kids within typical and needs instruction, so that our students are more balanced in our classrooms. Like we really shouldn't see a class that has 50% of the students within the needs instruction range. And that will really benefit all students if we have a nice spread of that. So they were looking at that as a real benefit of this assessment tool. So I'm really excited to see what it looks like in April, and I'd love to come back and present on that in the spring. Another area that I talked about when I presented in the fall was our developmental relationships survey. And in the fall, I said that we would be having a professional development on what are developmental relationships and what are these evidence-based ways, strategies that teachers can put in place to build these stronger relationships with students in a very intentional way. So in January, we had Search Institute come in and do a training that I facilitated with them. And we had a representative from every team at the middle school. Actually, we had multiple people asking, can I come too, even though I'm on the same team? So we had a really good representation across all settings at the middle school and from every department at the high school. So we had a really good representation from both. And really what the takeaway for me was the staff that came said, all staff need this. Which I was excited to hear. And so that is really kind of where we are in our planning of the next steps. The teachers were saying, we should bring this to all of our staff this year. And then they were like, well, maybe we should wait until the beginning of next year to kind of kick it off. So I have to talk to Kelly and Dave about sort of where we want to go with that, when the right time is to do that. But it was really well received. And I had several teachers reach out to me and said, this kind of reinvigorated me and reminded me of why I'm in this in the first place, because quite frankly, in the last few years, it's been easy to lose that with everything that they are having to do. So I think that's really positive to continue to roll that out to our staff. So as Pete said, this week we're celebrating Random Acts of Kindness Week district-wide, and Decisions At Every Turn, the town of Ashland area, and several other town organizations and the schools have been working together to kind of, we thought we'd just make this the first time we've ever done kind of like a coordinated effort in kindness. So there's been different events around the community. And I had sent out a newsletter with lots of different resources for every age level that teachers could use if they wanted to this week. And then I sent out information to families as well. I am very excited because this week I was able to go in, I think almost all the preschool classrooms. And today I was from 9 to 3, I was teaching at the Warren School, all K1 and 2 kindness lessons. And I'll be doing the same thing tomorrow. And that's one of the things I miss most about being a direct practitioner. And so it's just been so much fun. And I have to say that I have found some classes, I went into several kindergarten classrooms this morning, and honestly, they looked like first graders to me. And I was not expecting to see that. I was like, wow, like it was just pretty amazing to me. And even I have to say, some of the academic, I asked, one of our activities we were doing in kindergarten was they were drawing. We read a book about superpowers. My superpower is kindness. And they had to draw a picture. And it was amazing to see the kindergarten students who were actually writing, and I could actually read what they were writing next to their picture, and I didn't ask them to write. So I was really impressed. And then on the reverse, I definitely saw some classes that had a lot of difficulty with self-regulation and a lot of behaviors. So it was just interesting to see. I was expecting that, but I wasn't expecting to see some of these classrooms that just looked like a pre-pandemic classroom. And I was really impressed with that. But most of all, it was just so much fun. And I hope that they all enjoyed it as much as I did. So that's something that I would really like to continue to grow within the community and our schools in years to come. I think that is all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Jen. Questions? Mark?
Hey, everyone. So Jen, one of the things that we've talked about, since you came on and really started to develop the SEL program, is sort of having SEL competencies sort of integrated throughout the curriculum.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, you've talked a little bit during your comments about sort of teaching classes or doing a class on this or that, or with different kids. And I'm curious if you can give us a sense of like how far down the path are we to really integrating this throughout the system, pre-K to 12, and sort of what's your vision for that if we're not where you want to be at?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a process. I think we've moved. We're not where I want us to be yet, but I wouldn't expect us to be there at the moment. But I would say we have kind of our framework in terms of using responsive classroom at the Mendez and Warren. And I think that our teachers at the Mendez and Warren do a really great job of integrating these competencies through everything they do. At the middle school, I think that I've done a lot of PD with the middle school staff on intentionally integrating these competencies throughout your day. When you're doing your lesson planning, it's just in there and given them many different ways and ideas to do that. And I think that when I go into a classroom, I can pick out pieces of that in every class that I've gone into. So I definitely think that's being done. There's certain areas that I would love to see more consistently done. I would love students to have really specific coping self-management skills that teachers are modeling during the class, throughout, that become just kind of a norm. I think we're not there yet. And I definitely have, there's teachers across the board who just naturally do that because I think they do it for themselves. I think their own SEL skills are area of strength. But, I can sit here and tell you that everyone does that because they don't. And I think that's part of where Kelly referenced Judd High School earlier. And I'm really interested for us to kind of see what our students, part of that is having a students survey, and what our students are saying that our strengths are in terms of integrating social emotional competencies across the board, and what areas they think we can improve in, and really getting that intention. It's just, for me, it's that intentional, consistent approach. I think that a lot of times when you teach a skill through a PD to teachers, there gets a lot of excitement going and they're putting it in and they're doing it. But does that stay? Does that become a consistent part of what they're doing, their instruction? And I would say a lot of time, no, it does not. So that's definitely an area to work on. And I think the Judd High School is going to really help us pinpoint that better. So does that kind of answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, no, it does. That's great. I guess one follow-up on that is, I fully appreciate, what your comment about some people just have natural or developed strengths.
Yeah.
In SEL, and others, have weaknesses, or, we all have weaknesses. We all have strengths, I suppose. Yeah, I guess I want to get a sense of the buy-in, even for people who might not sort of naturally take to this. Is there effort towards improvement and growth, for the most part, or are we still trying to get people engaged in that work?
I mean, I have seen a tremendous positive change in terms of buy-in. I think that I haven't spoken to a teacher in any grade level who has given any resistance or doesn't believe that this is really important and a large piece of how we get our students to actually be engaged and learn and be successful in life. So it'd be interesting to hear what the principals have to say, but I really do think we have a great buy-in from our staff. I really think, and I will be honest, I think the pandemic has kind of helped that buy-in, because I really think that it kind of came to the forefront to everyone how important these self-management skills are and these coping skills to have. And I think it kind of opened a lot of eyes, and kind of, it affected every single person. So it affected staff just as much as it affected students and families. And I think that, you know, I honestly think that has increased buy-in.
That's great. We're glad to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any other questions?
So Jen, something you said kind of, you know, surprised me a little bit at the beginning when you were talking about the assessment data. And I think you said that what was expected was about 16% to be in the needs instruction, and we were significantly below that in multiple groups. Was that what I heard? I was.
Correct. Yep,
really
we were at 8. We were at 8% overall K-5, and I'm just going to see if I can bring this up so I can look at this.
And is that 16% a generic recommendation? And is it not contextual to COVID, or is it currently contextual? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
is that
no, it's not contextual.
You know,
it is not contextual to COVID. It is based on like their standardization sample. So it wouldn't have been. Yeah, it's definitely not contextual to COVID. But there would be like typically 16 in their sample when they, you know, did this for the DESA, 16% would be in needs instruction, 60% in strength, and the rest within the typical range. So yes, so 8% overall. I can just tell you quickly, kindergarten had 10% within needs instruction range. First grade had 7%. Second grade also had 7%. Third grade had 15%. That was that high. That was kind of the spike. Fourth grade had 7%, and fifth grade actually was our lowest at, it's not even telling me, but only 7 students were in the needs instruction range for fifth grade, which again, our fifth graders are, you know, have had the most normal schooling of the entire group. So, so yeah, I was surprised by that as well.
And I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, obviously, but when I hear that, and given our circumstance with COVID and how what we're at least anecdotally seeing with the impacts on everyone, how difficult is it for this assessment to be done with fidelity, I guess is my question. You know, so I want to make sure that the data is, when we see an anomaly like that that no one would have expected, are we getting the data right, I guess is my question.
Right. I mean, I think so that all of the research on this tool does say that this is a very accurate representation of social emotional competency. And, you know, I will say this is the first time, Maddie, this is the first time that our staff has done this tool. So, you know, I would actually expect that being the first time, that this might be, you know, we might have had more students within that range, within the need instruction range. But I feel like we did a really good job of training the teachers to use this tool. And, you know, I think until we have a second rating to compare it to, Paul, it's hard for me to kind of to know how reliable that is, but that's kind of what we have right now.
Yeah.
But I will say that at the Warren, so normally we would give this, I would want to give this tool like in October, beginning of October. This year we didn't give it until, you know, mid-year. And because it was our first year doing it and we just didn't have it all in the system ready for us yet. So the students in K1 and 2 that were identified in the needs instruction range were all already receiving tier 2 support from our counselors or some other, or our psychologists. So in that sense, it tells me that actually is very accurate. There were not kids within the typical range that were already receiving that tier 2 service. So that's another thing that can tell us, yeah, this actually is pretty accurate data.
Do you need to go deal with something back there, or?
No, my son is just getting ready for me to be done.
I can sympathize. So just one other question. I mean, we talked a lot about the students and assessing that and providing them the supports. But I know you've probably been keeping an eye on our staff as well. And, maybe you can speak, because this has obviously impacted everybody, and the staff included. And are you noticing that they need some more supports, and what are we doing in that realm?
Sure. So yeah, I do send out like a weekly newsletter for it's called the Zenden, social emotional support for staff. And I hadn't sent it out in the beginning of this year. And I started to get emails saying, why are you not sending this out? So I was like, oh, okay, people do read it. So I started sending that out again. And I did a survey for staff on what types of supports for their own social emotional well-being they would be interested in, that the district might be able to support them in. And I got a lot of different, most of the feedback was, we are feeling burned out. A lot of it was around the staff wanted more opportunities for social connection with each other, which makes a lot of sense. And the types of activities that they've been able to do in the past, they, haven't been able to do. I think we're starting to do it now, because I'm seeing a lot more, staff breakfasts and kind of things where they can actually get together in person. Some middle school and high school teachers are saying, I don't even know, there's new staff and I don't even know who they are. I haven't met them yet. So there was a lot of need for that kind of social connection piece, which luckily I think is starting to come back. Jake, I cannot talk to you right now. So that was a big piece. One thing that, Jake, one area that I'm looking at right now is having sort of the train the trainer model for 6 of our staff across buildings to participate in this training called Breathe for Change, which is specifically for educators. And educators learn different mindfulness strategies, yoga. There's a whole SEL curriculum that they can actually put these strategies into place in their classroom. So first, it's about transforming themselves and using the skills for themselves. And then secondly, it's for integrating it into the classroom. So we'll be doing that this summer. And then in the fall, we'll be doing a entire PD with staff around this. So I'm really hoping that will help, and most importantly, I think help our staff feel like we are offering support to them and offering things that they can do throughout their day to help them feel grounded, and that we really care about them. I'm sorry for the background.
We've been there. It's been a while, but I've been there. We get it. Yeah, we can you can go if you need to, because I think this meeting is going to take a while. Any last minute questions before we do let Jen go if she needs to?
Jen, I just have a quick question. I was curious if the assessments that you're doing are able to be administered to our non-English speaking students, or if there's something else, some other tool that we use to be able to kind of gauge their needs.
So the DESA that I was talking about, Tina, is actually done by the teachers. Okay. So it's the teachers rating. So luckily that, we're able to do that. And what we did actually with some of our L students was we actually had the classroom teacher and the ELL teacher rate together. because, some of our students were really not in the classroom as much when they were, getting, instruction, especially our non-English speakers. So yeah, we're really trying to get an accurate view of our students.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sarah, sorry, we lost you and we didn't.
No, that was my fault. I think my computer's telling me I'm ready for vacation.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that.
No worries.
But I think where it started to get a little bit funky was just about thanking our parents for trusting us in sending their kiddos out of school or out of the home for the first time in still very much a pandemic that was changing, and trusting us for their early childhood, preschool programming for their kids. Our PIT crew, that's what we affectionately call of our staff, have been working tirelessly throughout the year to provide that level of care and also that really language-based curriculum and instruction day in and day out. They are a fabulous group of individuals who have continually been challenged as we keep pivoting, but also have really took a critical lens at our instruction and our curriculum over the years, and are beginning to evaluate that. And as a lot of the other building administrators have talked about, looking at student growth and using our different measurements. In looking at that, we're also pulling in data at the class level and then also at the whole school level as we look at our assessments through Teaching Strategies Gold and then the curriculum that we have available to us. They've done an incredible job of like a homegrown scope and sequence preschool curriculum that then has slowly started to embed and align with the K-5 building. So this year we had a group of professional staff that were really looking at, building on our current really well existing PBIS program. 2 teachers went to the responsive classroom training that the K-5 building has gone through, and they're workshopping that out to our other staff during faculty and curriculum meetings. And that's been awesome to see and to hear it and in practice walk around the building. So that's good common language and consistency that will help our kiddos as they transition to kindergarten. Along those lines, we've also been looking at our SEL, kind of piggybacking on what Jen was saying, and not only looking at student growth, but where are their gaps? There's another group of teachers that are looking at our teaching strategy gold assessment that goes through 3 checkpoints throughout the year, and then actually writing supplemental curriculum to meet where those gaps are, and sharing those out to other colleagues so they can keep working on that and building those gaps where we may see kiddos who have, they've never been to school, but also they have very limited social experiences because of the pandemic. And we also have a seat at the table on the vertical alignment for our ELA, which is the first time ever, which is really great because that's helped us kind of think about our English language arts curriculum and readiness skills to give that consistent language. We're unpacking foundations this year and partially implementing it with a full implementation next year, which is really exciting because as Pete and Claudia had talked about, that is that phonics component. So it'll be great that our littlest learners can start to hear that language and start to get that exposure as they get ready. And I'm trying to think curriculum wise, I think that's it. PD, we've really been focused on the well-being for all. So we've done some collaborative team building, which as Jen said, a lot of it is virtual still. So we're really, trying to get creative with ways to bring the PIT crew together and enjoy ourselves and support each other in that social connection. But we've also done some work on trauma-informed care and what this transition means for families, students coming out of the pandemic can be sensitive to that and really focus on our relationship building. And at this level, it's really important to think of relationship building with parents too. It's their first experience with a public school. It's the first people that may be caring for their kiddos other than their immediate family. So really building that relationship and the flow of communication as they enter their schooling here with us in Ashland. We have tons of fun. As we've heard, it's a really busy month. It's been the random acts of kindness. Valentine's Day is really a month long in preschool. Lots of little notes and drawings that have been passed. We also have had Jen come in for lessons, which has been really nice and a lot of excitement. Our teachers have put together a Winter Olympics curriculum, which has been a lot of fun of opening ceremony parades, medal ceremonies with their levees and dramatic play. We've had ice cube Lego people going down luges during indoor recess that the kids have created. So a lot of fun over that week. And then also Nurse Karen, on top of, you know, all of her COVID work, did lessons in all of our classrooms about Dental Health Week and the importance of, you know, your toothbrushing and dental care and all of that. So she's been doing a great job with that as well. Our PTO continues to be amazing and think about ways to support staff. We've had lots of special treats and notes and encouragement. They did a lot of outdoor play dates to try to build some community among our preschool families in the fall. And they're really looking forward to continuing that as the weather gets better and finding ways to fundraise and provide some enrichment for us through different organizations and puppeteers and different programs. So they've been great. And, you know, we had a turkey trot this year, first time ever, thinking of like outdoor events where our families could go to. So they've been a good sense of energy and support for us as we think about the community activities that we can do. Our registration has already started for next year, which is crazy to think because we just passed our 100th day of school. But we are full-fledged in registration for September 2022. We've had 90 inquiries right now. Our full capacity is about 125, and we have a lot of requests for full day. So those are currently full right now with a wait list for full day programming. So our openings right now are half day programming for 3 and 4-year-olds. A few weeks ago, you, as well as Chris, supported a 2% increase in our tuition just to help support and offset some of our costs. So that was a little bit of a tuition increase that is going on the books for September. But we've done a virtual open house and we plan to bring the families who have enrolled in with us in small groups in the spring so that they can kind of see the building and start to meet our staff and learn about the programming and try to build in a little bit of a transition for our newer families over the summer.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Questions? Any questions? All right. You get off easy, I guess.
Awesome.
Thank you. Kathy.
Hi,
Last but
everybody.
not least.
Hi.
Hi.
You know, everyone has done such a nice job of kind of highlighting what's going on in the schools. I'm just going to add very briefly a couple of things. This week, I got final notification from the Department of Education that the district is in full compliance with regard to our special education, our civil rights, and our English language learner programming. So that was a huge happy for me because it is a lot of work to go through the tiered focus monitoring audit. It entails a lot of, you know, uploads of documents, interviews, file reviews, in the ELE section, you know, answering questions with regard to, you know, self-assessment using the Castaneda 3-prong method of evaluating programming. So it was really quite nice to have full implementation of all of the standards. The other nice thing that happened, actually, I think it was the week before, was we also received from DESE the special education determination under Part B, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Act review of our dropout rates, our graduation rates, our compliance, our any kind of problem solving resolutions, any disproportionality, and this is all with regard to special education. And we have continued to meet requirements in that audit and indices, and so we got notification of that as well. So that was also equally nice. So I guess I do want to say that it is wonderful to work in a district that has such dedicated people. This doesn't happen because of me. It happens because of the building administrators who are in the buildings, making sure that full compliance is happening with regard to all of these areas, and the dedicated staff who really kind of put kids first and really try to constantly assess what's going to, you know, be the best thing for students. So those were the nice areas of, you know, kind of the regulatory compliance. With regard to some of the neat things that staff are doing, we have had 4 staff across the district and a 5th about to begin entering into Wilson training. So that has been wonderful to have that level of interest, and it's across 3 different buildings that we have the interest in getting Wilson certified. We also had a really nice beginning process of some vertical teaming and looking at our specialized programs. So staff coming together and looking in their like program at the next level and the levels below. And I think that that will end up being the springboard for better programming as we move forward. We've begun to have summer programming and considerations for our extended school year. We've had a lot of staff indicate interest, so I'm excited about that because that is something that for many students is necessary and ultimately very enriching for them and for their overall skill development. In terms of parent involvement, I'll be happy to report that both ASHPAC and our AB PAC are working tirelessly and hard at, you know, being both a advisory panel for me and for the district, and also support for other parents. ASHPAC, which is the parent advisory for parents of kids who have unique needs, just held their basic rights workshop on February 8th. Their next board meeting is March 9th, in case anyone's interested in joining virtually. But they've been, you know, meeting with me and my team, my leadership team, on a monthly basis. And it's been a nice way to have dialogue between the parental perspective and what the district is doing and the concerns that they might have with regard to our programming or, you know, what might be happening within buildings. The ABPAC, which is the Bilingual Parent Advisory Council, is also in its fledgling development, but we have a committed trio of parents who have begun the process of looking at creating a Facebook page and also developing rudimentary bylaws so that they can function as that advisory council that would be so helpful for the district and certainly for programming for English learners. Let me see what else I can tell you. I've had fun going into classrooms of late with the thought that Dave DiGirolamo had mentioned, that beginning process of 8th graders thinking about high school. I had a parent doing the same thing in terms of thinking about high school and asking if they could look at some classes. Ms. St. Clair was gracious enough to find 3 student volunteers to lead this parent on a great tour. And I got to observe a few classes with the parent. And I will be happy to report that John Noel can teach me geometry any day of the week because he is so patient and wonderful with his delivery of lesson planning. But I've been able to do that at each of the buildings. And it's been wonderful to kind of step in and see the tremendous work that staff are doing. And that's about it. I'm going to keep it short. Are there questions? Our numbers are high, the needs are great, but we have really dedicated people and a dedicated school committee that's really standing behind the schools and the administration and trying to do right by the kids here.
Thank you, Kathy. Questions?
Kathy, I'll have a simple one for you. You mentioned that we have some staff that are taking Wilson training and getting Wilson certified, and for if there is anybody that's watching that doesn't know what that is, could you explain what that is?
Of course, there are you know, students who have language-based learning needs and specific learning disabilities. And what we find is delivering explicit research-based instruction is absolutely the best way to go. There are several methods of delivering reading instruction or that help with that. Wilson is one method. There's Orton Gillingham, there's Sonday, there are all other types of methods, but we find that Wilson and Orton Gillingham typically are the most popular. And it's nice for the district to develop that competency. And it's quite an intensive, quite honestly, professional development that a staff goes through. For certification, you are easily in training for about a year to a year and a half. You go through both coursework, and then you also have a supervised practicum where you're observed doing the service delivery. So having people who are willing to commit to that level is phenomenal. And ultimately, people who are certified in Wilson and certainly OG are able to deliver the type of instruction for our students that need that real intensive reading instruction to help them gain skills and gain that phonological knowledge to help break the code, so to speak, for reading and for reading for the comprehension as well.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else? Okay, awesome. Thank you all for those updates. It's really helpful for us to hear from all of you about what's going on in your buildings. So we really appreciate that. And then Chris, are you here still, Chris? Where are you? There you are.
I'm here. How are you?
You hung in for the 2 hours. Thank you. We have a reconciliation to hear about from you.
Yep. So this is the October to December student activities reconciliation. So, I mean, this is what you see, generally speaking, every quarter. Really nothing new here. This is a reconciliation to the bank statements, to Munis, which is our accounting system, and our QuickBooks system. So it's asking you to accept this material.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that before we have a motion? No questions? Who's got the motion?
I would move to approve the student activities account bank reconciliation for the period October 1, 2021 to December 30th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
And then all in favor, Mark?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Aaron? Paul?
Aye. It looked like Aaron was frozen there for a second. So.
I hear you now. And aye for me as well. Thank you. And then next up is a discussion about the policy amendment, EBCFA, face covering policy. We talked about this, Paul and I talked about it with Jim. You probably have all noticed Jim and Mike aren't here this evening. They are at a superintendent's conference, but we talked about it, started the conversation in a policy subcommittee meeting. I know Mr. Adams has written to the community about what he's thinking in this regard. And then we had a budget workshop last weekend, the entire school committee with the administrator, and we had an opportunity to start that discussion then. So this is a furtherance of that discussion. And Mr. Kendall, if you want to fill us in on what you've done with the policy.
Sure. And I just sent a new update to you all that I'll also show here in a second. And I'll probably just take a second to back up for anyone listening that, to provide context of what we did in November and what we're doing now and kind of the whys and where we're landing. So let me share this. Let's see, here we go. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes, I see it.
Okay.
Can you make it a little bigger, Paul?
I can try. A little better?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So this is the current policy. This is the one that's active right now. And essentially in I don't know, somebody keep on coming in there. So essentially in November, we added this section here that talked about not requiring face coverings in certain buildings that met certain requirements. And so At that time, the state was doing a waiver policy that if we met certain requirements, like 80% vaccination rate in the building, that we could apply for a waiver and get that waiver. So this talked about that. And we also, at that point, were talking about that for only vaccinated people, and we were requiring an attestation to that effect. Essentially, given what's occurred, we obviously didn't get there. So now what's happened, we all know this, but for anybody else that's listening, the state has now taken and said they will not renew the mask mandate that expires at the end of this month. So at the end of the month, there will no longer be a mask mandate. They're also lifting any requirements for vaccination rates in that waiver system. So what we essentially did, and I just sent this updated one to the committee. It's not updated in a substantive way. It's more of a clarity way. And so this is the redlined version, and I will make that 150. So essentially it took what was there and replaced it with this paragraph. And essentially what's happened now is that we got rid of the vaccination references to vaccinations in the requirements and also the attestation. And so we simplified that down there, and we took the one sentence at the beginning, and we just clarified that it applies to whether you're inside or outside of buildings. It provides the exceptions that we know of because our health service providers are in school. They are operating with the guidance from Department of Health that will still want masks in the health offices and when they're providing services. So what this also did is, from what you saw on Saturday, added that language that says with the exception of the health offices and any other areas of superintendent or designee may require face covering. So it allows for that more discrete discretion, if you will. And this would be the clean version of that new language. So it simplifies it and allows for that discretion to occur, and also highlights where there might still be exceptions where masks are required. Obviously, this is where it's still possible on our transportation. There's still the federal mandate for masks on our buses. So Jim and I had a correspondence with a few people relative to the health services that we provide, and wanted to make clear that we support those staff that need to wear masks while providing those services. And what I expressed to them is where we typically try to land with these policies is a balance between the policy and the procedural stuff. The policy obviously sits with us, and procedural with the district professionals. And while I would say that most people don't read this policy as reference, they go by the proactive communications and procedural things that are communicated by the district. And so I think that there was some concern around just making sure that we highlight that the health professionals are going to be going by the Department of Health guidance. And personally, I think that this supports that. And I think the key point is to ensure that the communications that will come out from Jim and the district just highlight and set those expectations. So essentially, this is essentially the same thing that you've seen prior, but we've just clarified that this applies to outdoor. And there are exceptions, notable exceptions with the health services, and provides a more direct, attestation that the superintendent has discretion over particular areas, more discrete areas. So,
comments, questions?
I just want to thank the policy subcommittee, which I think is Paul and Lori, for trying to sort through the weeds of this. I think where we were back in November, starting for December was, we got to a point where I think we felt comfortable that the superintendent really needed to be able to work with a lot more flexibility. And we were moving in that direction. Then, of course, saw the Omicron spike, so it never really got there. But as I read this policy, it's really expanding on that concept to say, look, the mask mandates as a general proposition are going away unless the superintendent, for some reason, thinks we need to do something focused. And so I'm pleased that we're making that progress. It seems like, if we had another spike, you would have under this policy the ability to reinstate a mask mandate on a building by building level, or in gyms, if you're having a group of 1,000 students in a building, 800 students in a place, you could have some discretion there. And I think that's based on where we are now, it feels like that's the right place to be. So I support the changes represented by this draft policy.
And I would just add, and Paul, maybe you can help clarify this, that, obviously the date on this reflects when our committee first made some changes to the mask policy. And if we adopt this tonight, then, these changes will become part of the policy. But even though if we make these changes tonight, it's still within Superintendent Adams' discretion as to when this will happen. And so it doesn't mean that tomorrow school is mask optional. So if you could just talk about the date piece.
Yeah. So that's a good point. And this is one of the things I did share with someone that sent an email to me about this. Is this does not directly lift any mandates, right? What this does is set it up so that it's optional under the conditions. And the first condition being the state doesn't require it. Well, the state still requires it till the February 28th. So to the end of the month, this can't apply, except at the high school where we already have the waiver, right? So if we approve this tonight, and Jim isn't going to do this, so just saying this, he's not doing this, but he would have the discretion to take the masks and make them optional at the high school, same as he would have had previously, with the exception of the attestation that we removed and the vaccination piece. But even with the vaccination piece, the state waiver is for vaccinated people only. So again, the state requirement's still there. So we didn't want to have yet another anybody who's tried to read Mass General Law where they keep on just having dated sections. It makes it very hard to follow. So we updated the language in this section because it doesn't substantively change the timing. The timing is up to Jim, but he would only be able to lift the mandate for the high school and vaccinated people before the end of the month. After that, he would have more discretion. And as he's communicated, his timing would be March 7th is what his current plan is. So so that's important about the timing. This, we vote tonight, it doesn't mean your kid's coming to school with no mask tomorrow. Nothing's changed. This just sets the groundwork so that our policy aligns with the changes at the state level so that we make those changes when appropriate.
Other comments or concerns about this?
Lori, it's not necessarily that we can deal with it in a policy way, but one thing that some parents asked me during the week was how we're going to deal with bullying based on the choices a child makes for masking or not masking or following a parent's direction. And my answer back to the people asking me that was like, well, it'll be like all the other bullying situations that are handled individually by the building principals. But I'm just wondering if, could we have like a sort of agreement that going into this, we have discussions at the building level of like the expectations of our student populations and how they're to deal with their peers in regards to mask choices?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Erin. And I think, you know, I would, when Jim starts making his communications to the community about that, you know, I would hope that the expectation would be communicated. And, you know, I would suggest you shoot him an email about that if he's not already planning on doing that, just so he is reminded. But I certainly am on that page with you. I think I did just, I'm in a conversation with chairs from other school committees. And I know that this topic has come up and people have gone out of their way to make statements in this regard. And I believe that we should too. But since Jim's not here to really fine tune that, and just knowing how he has spoken about this issue in the past, I am hopeful that he will communicate that. But I would just encourage you to put that in writing just so he's reminded about it.
Yeah, and I'll add, I kind of alluded to the conversations via email that we've had and around the health services and things like that, right? And that was one of the concerns that, or just, you know, issues that Michelle Smith raised, that to ensure that the staff felt supported and not singled out, for those that when they're providing services, the guidance still is to wear masks, right? And, you know, you know, that communication, and I was communicating with Jim when I was replying to Michelle, was, I think that's the importance of ensuring that the communication and expectations are set up front, that we're providing an environment that's 100% supportive to whatever situations that are going to be out there. And that's, you know, obviously been expressed by, you know, Michelle around staff situations too. So I know that's on his radar. So, but definitely send them the emails to make sure that that's the priority in the communications. And anecdotally,
it's super important. Yeah. And if it's not going well, again, we're giving him discretion. You know, if he will have the opportunity to change this back if people aren't being respectful, etc. And not only that, I mean, at least from my point of view, I just want to make clear where I'm coming from in supporting this next step, is that it's a response to what's going on right now, where our numbers are very low incidence of infection and cases, and, you know, vaccination rates being good. It's not a statement, because some of the emails that we are still getting, you know, allude to, you know, masks don't work, or masks cause other problems like acne and so forth. And this is not a response to that. We believed that masks were an important mitigation, and I personally believe that they saved lives. So this isn't a statement against masking per se. It's just at this point in time, it's the appropriate next step, given that we've made it to this point in the pandemic. But should anything change, the policy gives the flexibility for us to meet that moment. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that, but I just want to be clear on, you know, where I'm coming from.
I would piggyback on what you said, Lori. I agree with everything you just said in terms of masks. And I think the reason I'm comfortable with this policy is because it gives a great deal of flexibility to Mr. Adams. And I have appreciated the responsiveness and kind of the thoughtful way in which he's moved forward with masks. He has taken into account you know, very clearly the health and safety of our students and teachers, and looking at community positivity rates, looking at vaccination rates, and really being in tune with both our school nurses and with you know, our COVID cop, Ed Berman, to really be thoughtful about his decisions. So giving him the flexibility to respond to what we need as it unfolds, I think is the right thing to do at this point. And, you know, I would agree with you that this isn't a statement that we think masks don't work and aren't an effective mitigation strategy, but that at this point, the flexibility in terms of when and where they're used is the right step.
I'll just quickly say I agree exactly with what you've articulated, Lori and Tina.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, masks were the singular thing that worked. Distancing didn't work. All the other things were, meaningless as far as the effectiveness. Obviously, masks were the key to everything. So, I mean, I don't think this is just making sure we can get back to some normalcy with some flexibility, right? So, and for what it's worth, Aaron, I'm actually going to be interested to see how many kids take it off. My daughter already said, I'm leaving it on. Not because she's afraid, not because she's just like, I'm used to it, not a big deal. And, quite frankly, she likes to be able to hide her face a little bit, and just, so it'd be interesting because it's not going to be as clear cut as this way or that way. I think it's going to be a mixed bag. And I don't think you're going to be able to, hone in on a person to bully for a reason that you think that we might think, right? So.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to policy EBCFA as presented.
Second. And then all in favor, Aaron? Paul?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me. Thank you. That passes. And that's just, we're amending the policy. That's a one vote thing. We don't need to go to another meeting to finalize that. Chris, you're up again for the transportation fee for SY23.
That's correct. So for next fiscal year, so the request is to increase a per student cost by $10 or a max family cost of $20. The last time that we saw an increase in transportation fee was the 2017-2018 school year. So it seems to be, appropriate to increase the fee at this point in time.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about why we need to raise the fee?
I mean, our transportation costs increase contractually each year. So that, that's one reason. We are, we will be going out to bid at the beginning of fiscal 2013 for a new service provider. So it's reasonable to assume that, not a new service provider, but the contract, expires this year. So we don't have, a full known picture of what the contract will look like next year. So generally speaking, I think the percentage increase was about 2.9%, which is aligned with, our contractual increases over the past couple of years.
So do the increases that we're imposing or looking to charge for bus fees cover the cost of the increase in transportation costs?
No.
Okay. So we're just
no.
The district is still absorbing more into its budget than it's asking families to pay for.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, it's probably incrementally. It's probably going to be about a 10K increase, if that. Probably somewhere between 6 to 8,000 in terms of additional incremental revenue that we get.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions about that? Concerns?
Actually, I'm sorry, one follow-up. In the past, we've had different rates depending on whether people make the payment or make the payment by, I think it's May 1st, if I remember right. Are we still doing that? Are we supposed to do that for this coming year?
We are. So the if it was before May 1st, it would be $290 for a max of 580. And then after May 1st, it would be $360 and $720.
So anybody who's listening, get your checks in early.
Save yourself some money.
Yeah.
Other questions before we take a vote? Anybody have a motion?
I would move to approve the transportation fee for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
Second.
And then all in favor, Tina?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aaron? Aye for me. Next up, there's a grant acceptance, Mass Cultural Council for $700 to Ashland High School Music Department. Is anybody presenting any information about that, or do we just need to take a vote? Hearing nothing. Does anybody want to make a motion? Looks like we just get to accept a grant, which is not a bad thing. Who wants to make that motion?
I would move to accept the grant for the Massachusetts Cultural Council in the amount of $700 for the Ashland High School Music Department as presented.
Second.
And then all in favor, Aaron?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
An aye for me. And then Paul, warrant approvals?
1 second. Between January 21st, 2022 and February 17th, 2022, I, Paul Kendall, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $746,654.99. This includes general fund expenses of $526,275.07, revolving expenses of $220,304.81, and meals tax expenses of $75.11.
Thank you, Paul. Does anybody have anything on the minutes of January 20th, 2022? Motion?
Move to approve the minutes of January 20th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, Tina?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me. Do we have any buddy with the gifts and donations? Jim usually reads that. Does anyone know if we have any this evening?
Chris, do we have any? Or
So I saw it in the material. I wasn't. I can pull it up real quick, and we could go through it. I just need about 2 seconds to get back into that that file.
Sure.
So Ashland Business Association for $100. Planet Aid for $380.10. The Black Cloud Giving Fund, Robert Half for $25. Ohio Prince Spiritware for $59.44. And Augusto Gonzalez for $100. Part of the Helping Our Own fund. And the first one, I apologize, was so the items 2, 3, and 4 are for miscellaneous gifts and donations, and the first one from Ashland Business Association was Ashland High School Reality Fair.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have a motion to accept the gifts and donations?
Move to approve the gifts and donations as presented.
Second.
All in favor, Mark?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Aye for me. And we are at committee reports of activities. Does anybody have anything they want to share real quick?
I'll give you an update just on Mendez. So this week, the blasting contractor demobilized. So to give you some context on that, the original estimate was for 45 days of blasting. We were doing 2 blasts a day. So you're not going to blast twice every day, but so you figure that would have been an estimate of about 60 to 80 blasts possible. We did 23. So that gives you the kind of idea of how little ledge we found there. And so they're going to start foundation work next week. And they're going to actually be on site this Saturday for a few hours to try to prep that area and get the blast rock out of that northwest foundation area. So it's kind of funny. Claudia talked about the first couple of weeks, huge changes, everything's changing. And I feel like probably everybody's like, nothing's really changed in the last month, right? Because it's just a big sandbox and not really much looks like it's changed at all. But a lot has been done. The drainage swale that goes and takes the water from the north side where the wetlands are around the perimeter of the site to discharge into that intermittent stream, that was completed. Obviously, they got the blasting done, and they're prepping for the foundation work this week. And then just on a side note, if you recall, we did have that grove of trees to the north of the building that we had slated to try to save, those like a small group of pine trees. There wasn't, with the sparseness of the woodland back there, there wasn't a lot of trees there. That's one of the side effects of not having the ledge we expected. So the ledge would help to stabilize the soils. And so if we experienced ledge over there, we could blast, and then the slope would be relatively vertical when you're doing the foundation there. Because there was essentially not really any ledge over there, it was all boulders. What we've had to do is now slope that. And with the little bit of water we saw pooling there, the slope had to be a 3-to-1 slope. And essentially all that means is we weren't able to save most of those pines. And so what we're doing instead is we've had the tree contractor come out, remove those pines. There is an oak and another small deciduous tree that's staying, but instead we'll invest in a replanting of that area with, quite frankly, a better sampling of different types of vegetation and trees back there. So that was a pivot that's happened recently. And Claudia, am I forgetting anything that's been going on? But okay.
No, I think you summed it up pretty nicely. I can't wait till the foundation's in.
Yeah, so this will be an exciting time. So they're gonna and they've been doing the rock breaking, and now they're doing the rock crushing. And for those who don't know, that the reason for that is what they're trying to do is reuse and amend the soils that are they're excavating on site. So if you see, there is a large pile of rock, but there's also a large pile of soil. And what they're doing is they're using the crusher to amend that soil to be structural fill for the base of the foundations and things like that. So they're actually able to reuse that material as opposed to haul everything off and then haul things back on for those purposes. It's noisy, and we appreciate the patience of the neighbors. And this has certainly been the loudest portion of the project. I guess another thing, the major part of the exporting of the overburdened soils has been completed, with the exception of next week. They are going to take the area they're doing the sloping in that last little bit and do some trucking during the break. But aside from that, the exporting of the overburdened soils, and therefore the predominant continual trucking of that, is also over. So there's going to be significantly less truck traffic for the time being. It'll obviously ebb and flow as the project goes with different things. When we're pouring concrete, there might be a steady flow of concrete trucks and things like that at different stages, but those will all be communicated to the neighbors. So.
Well, do we stand to see any savings because of the reduced amount of blasting?
No. So as I've said before, we continue to see a tremendous amount of budget pressure with this. So as I've mentioned before, when we voted to approve both projects, the public safety building reaped the benefits of COVID. When there wasn't a lot of issues or there was known strains, but a lot of eco work, and they came in well under budget. We've seen a lot of strain on that. And in order to come in on budget for the site work, what this site contractor did was get a little creative. And so that's the reuse of soil, but also essentially he bought out the risk with ledge. So you never know what you have until you start to uncover it. And so if you did an allowance-based method, he would have to uncover it, he would have to measure it, he would have to blast it, remove it, and then remeasure to be able to and keep track of how much was there. And instead, what he did is he bought the risk, and he said that they're going to do a lump sum for that, and then they own all the risk. So they did benefit from that, but we also benefited from. I can tell you the next bidder would have been significantly more. It's because of that that creative thinking and that buyout and his risk isn't gone, but that was probably one of the bigger risks. And so, I think we both benefited from the creativity there. So we're in the middle of, we had just on the budget pieces, we did release Shamit to award a handful of the filed sub-trades that came in. Those bids that came in, they're still going through the non-filed bids, and we're set to approve what's called the GMP, or guaranteed maximum price, on our March 10th meeting. I can tell you that that's going to be an interesting conversation because of the budgetary pressure. I think I mentioned that it's really coming from a few spots. We got the roofing all of a sudden. Roofing went crazy. It was a very sudden thing. Mirror materials that were readily available all of a sudden were 8 to 12 months lead time. And the other thing that was happening in roofing was the manufacturers weren't setting the price for the contractors until it shipped, not when they placed the order, which causes a lot of challenges for bidding and things like that. And that's something that, we put that out early because we wanted to minimize that risk, and it came in well over budget. So we're working through all those things, and it's been a struggle, but no, the short answer is no. That contractor was more creative and bought out that risk. So,
thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else have anything they want to share about what they did or what's going on? I know it's late. I'm going to say real quick, Kelly, Challenge Day was really great. I participated in Challenge Day along with a bunch of high school students and some faculty, and it's a really meaningful, important thing that you do. I would do it again and again and again. So thank you for providing the opportunity. It's late, so I won't go into all the things I really would like to say about it. But if you ever get the opportunity to participate, please take it if you can.
We appreciate you participating.
Thank you. All right, anybody else before I take a motion to adjourn? Okay, who's got it?
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
I was unmuted, Tina. I got there first.
All in favor. Tina.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your input and your time.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Later. Thank you.
Aye.